in order to keep the net export machine going. Now, there's no doubt that in both places, and I have a great deal of affinity both with China and Vietnam, there is remarkable progress. And that should not be jeopardized. But at the same time, there is a class war happening in China as well. Because for, let's say, Chinese aluminum to remain competitive in California, Chinese wages have to be repressed. If the Nixon, you see, my analogy has gone too far. If the Trump shock causes the Chinese authorities to boost aggregate demand domestically, and therefore to increase social security, to increase the social wage, in order to rebalance the economy away from net exports to the United States, then the previous years of globalization may have turned out to be a precursor of something good for the working class in China. But that depends on politics. It is not something that will emerge out of markets. It's not the result of market forces. It will only be the result of class struggle.
Here, you can highlight the irony. Washington thinks it's punishing China, but tariffs may actually accelerate China's transition toward a stronger welfare state. You can connect it to how American workers have also faced wage stagnation, but without the state investment China might actually end up doing. Frame it as, when the U.S. plays trade war, it may unintentionally push China closer to what American workers have been demanding for decades.
I would certainly take aim at the gross imbalances. You can't continue to have a world in which America lives off rents. The American ruling class collects and collects and collects rents produced by the proletariat in China, in Vietnam, in Germany, and so on, with the American working class living in wastelands between the East Coast and the West Coast. There is no way that would be acceptable to anyone who cares about humanity. But frankly, tariffs would not be my weapon of choice. For me, it would be a multilateral conference, a new Bretton Woods, whereby you sit around and effectively, to put it bluntly, you take a leaf out of John Maynard Keynes's suggestion back in 1944 at the Bretton Woods Conference, and you do that which he had suggested that the world should have done back then, which is to create a monetary system that simultaneously punishes symmetrically both surpluses and deficits, not just surpluses, not just deficits, both of them, and out of levies that you impose upon symmetrically deficits and surpluses, you create a fund, a global fund, a green fund, from which you
point out how revolutionary and unrealistic in U.S. politics this idea is. For an American audience, you can contrast it with today's reality. Instead of global cooperation, Washington and Beijing are locked in a zero-sum fight. Add that Varoufakis' vision is closer to a Green New Deal for the world, but American elites profit from the existing rent system, so change is blocked.
Trump, you've introduced these tariffs. We're going to raise you. Maybe we'll put tariffs on you that are even higher than what you've done to us to show we mean business. What should governments around the world, be they in Beijing or Brussels or London, what should they be doing now?
Well, you don't need to be a mathematician or a chess master to know that when you're running a major surplus, trade surplus with a country like the United States, and you have somebody like Trump prepared to take the tariff war to its logical conclusion, that you can't win that war. If I am selling stuff to you and you're not selling stuff to me, then there's no way I can use tariffs against you. I will run out of things to tariff well before you do, and I will lose. It really is the no-brainer, as I would say. So what should you do? It depends on, the United Kingdom is quite different to the European Union. And, it's interesting, isn't it, that Donald Trump, who really loves Brexit because he hates the European Union, has created this wedge, 20% tariffs for the European Union, 10% for the UK, which, by the way, if any strong supporters of the United Kingdom return to the European Union are listening, this was a Trump strategy by which to make sure that Britain never returns to the single market or to the customs union, because who would dare do that when you have this wedge? But setting that aside, the European Union and China are in a similar situation because they are both running very large.
This is a great moment to talk about Europe's stagnation and missed opportunities, and how America actually uses military spending as its growth engine. You could emphasize, Varoufakis calls out Europe as a sorry, idiotic continent. And he's not wrong. Without bold investments, Europe remains dependent on the US and vulnerable to shocks.
Look inside your own political economy. and rebalance it away from the ruling class towards investment, and investment not only in the conditions of the working class, but also in your technology.
Finally, you're sort of suggesting that countries, or at least surplus countries, should respond to Trump's tariffs by sort of radically transforming their economies. Now, there'll be many people who want that to happen anyway, but I think they'll only do that if they're pushed. And they might be thinking, look, these tariffs, they look bad, but they can't last long, right? Navarro media audiences might not care if the stock markets plunge, but Donald Trump, at least if we sort of believe what he said 4 years ago, really did. He seemed to be obsessed with the stock markets going up then. So how likely do you think it is that he sees what's happening to the stock markets? He sees that there's a recession incoming and says, actually, well, he wouldn't say my mistake, would he? He'd sort of say, I've won huge concessions from all of these countries and the tariffs are going down. How likely do you see a U-turn, presumably dressed up as some kind of victory for the Trump administration?
I have no idea what's going on in the Donald's brain, if such a thing exists. Allow me to say a couple of things, though, in response to your question. The first thing is, there is no doubt that many around the world, in Britain, in Germany, in Italy, in France, and so on, and in the United States, think, oh my God, what's happening to us? Let's wait until the midterms. Let's wait for another 4 years. Somebody else will come who will reverse course. Well, that is just pure wishful thinking. If you think of what Trump 1.0 did, the first administration of Trump, they introduced various tariffs. Did Biden reverse any one of them? Any of them? None. Even the new Cold War that Trump started against China, it was he who started it in 2017, 2018, with massive tariffs on aluminum and other goods, and also the ban on Huawei. Let's not forget that. What did Biden do?
This is crucial for American viewers. It's not about Trump versus Biden. Both parties are locked into the same geopolitical path. Once America makes a strategic turn, it never goes back. Like after Nixon left the gold standard. Great spot to challenge the idea that elections really change U.S. grand strategy.
Trump always had two arrows to use against what he considers to be the enemy. The one was tariffs, and the second one was tax cuts. I very much fear, and I'm saying this as somebody who really, truly, deeply opposes tax cuts. They are a major gift to the unworthy and an instrument of class war against the working class. But the second arrow is tax cuts. I bet you, Michael, that when he announces massive tax cuts, particularly for rich people, particularly for capital, the stock exchanges are going to go through the roof. And then I very much fear that we're going to have another situation, because I'm old enough to remember Ronald Reagan. Because you see, the Republicans in the United States are the ones who really don't care about austerity, and they don't care about budget deficits, and they don't have the Rachel Reeves fixation with fiscal rules and so on. They let the whole thing blow up, especially if it's tax cuts to their brethren that they're considering. He will push the deficit of the...
Here, you can tie it to today's fears of inflation, debt ceilings, and how global finance still relies on the dollar. The punchline: the U.S. can run deficits forever because the world bankrolls America, but that privilege is also America's Achilles heel, and it fuels resentment everywhere. And that's the paradox. The same system that gives Washington unmatched financial power also plants the seeds of its decline. Allies grow frustrated, rivals look for alternatives, and ordinary Americans still wonder why prosperity never seems to trickle down. The dollar may remain king for now, but history teaches us that no empire holds its crown forever. The question isn't if the balance will shift, it's when and how prepared America will be when it does.